By the way, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this event sponsored by Bay Atlantic University and the Global Policy Institute. My name is Paolo from Schirach, and I serve as a chair of political science and international relations at BAU, Bay Atlantic University, and I'm also privileged to serve as president of the Global Policy Institute. We are talking today in this event about Afghanistan, a very unhappy story that unfortunately has been evolving on a not exactly a linear, good direction for what, 40 years or more. I stopped counting, a long time ago. And we are fortunate to have with us two major experts on Afghanistan. Our good colleague, Sebnem, who is an adjunct professor at Bay Atlantic University, who is an expert on economic issues. And she indeed has worked, in depth on an assessment for the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, on the economic conditions of Afghanistan after, or an attempt to assess everything, considering the impact of the change of regime in Kabul due to the American withdrawal, collapse of the government, cut of foreign aid, et cetera, et cetera. She'll elaborate on that. And obviously that makes a situation that was already pretty bad, almost, I would say, horrible, but she'll give us all the details. And further, we are fortunate to have with us, joining from Amman, Zafiris, who is an expert on many, many things I discovered. I won't, and you have his, by the way, both speakers' bios on the invitation, so I will not go through their many, many professional accomplishments, but Zafiris is joining us from Amman in Jordan, and he will discuss, help us understand better the potential repercussions of the deteriorating economic situation in the country, which is unfortunately one of them, most likely an exodus from the country, a refugee crisis, and the various ripple effects that this may have, given what we know about this phenomena, for the neighboring countries, most notably probably Iran and Pakistan, but others, and possibly an exodus towards Europe and beyond. So with that, I want to really yield to our good colleagues, and Sebnem, you have the floor, and for some initial remarks, followed by Zafiris. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paolo. Thank you for the invitation. So today I would like to present some highlights from our rapid appraisal in September, right after the events, and then some updates on economic sides to set the stage for the following discussion. If you allow me, I will share my slides, and I would like to distribute it to whoever is interested as reference, because I also attach some links to our studies and publications. I'm trying to share it. Please bear with me. Hope you can see my slides.
Yes.
Great. So we are focusing on post-August 15, and I put on the right-hand side some SDG icons, not all of them, because some of them are more urgent than the others to think about and to act on. So what happened in August 15 is a sudden shock on the economy and on the society. But you may think Afghanistan has been in difficult periods since maybe 3 decades and maybe is able and resilient to overcome these shocks, but it is not the case, and I will explain why. Already Afghanistan is the poorest country in the region in terms of average income per capita. Afghanistan made considerable progress in human development indicators, which is also including SDGs, over the past decades, but still is very fragile and very vulnerable to different shocks and not as resilient as one wished them to be. Why? Because today, 1 in 3 Afghans is facing hunger. 95% of households, according to the recent numbers. And this may get worse to 100%, of course, in the next coming months, which is leading to winter, a harsh winter for those of you who know the region. So this is the big alarm. The second one is COVID-19. The vaccination rate is very low. The health facilities are not operational, almost none of them. Slowly recovering after some project implementation. On top of it, 2 consecutive droughts, last year and this year, hit the agricultural sector, which is the main activity in the country. So as a result, one can think that the poverty is escalating, and the recent events on the institutional side, financial crisis, sanctions, and political transition, stop the public services. So almost health and educational services, they frozen, slowly recovering. So what I want to portray here is not the dramatic picture, but give you some sense of the economic impact, financial issues, because this is not a crisis like the previous ones. It happened that Afghanistan lost 8%, 10% of its GDP, depending on the weather events, or the political issues, the withdrawal of US Army and other issues, and recovered slowly. So there is a resilience in the Afghan society and economy, but this is not like before, it's unprecedented. So first, I would like to give some initial numbers that we think we have faith on, and then open up for a productive dialogue. And what is the role for the international community to prevent an even more severe humanitarian crisis or a catastrophe. So what happened after August 15? As many of you may heard, the aid, international aid that counted for 80% of the operating expenses, meaning daily expenses, that the treasury of the government was cut by 80%. This is a huge amount. Then trade, the customs were frozen. Afghanistan is a trade-dependent, import-dependent country. So closing the borders means shortages of goods, even food in the domestic economy. So that's why the starvation is so big in the picture. Then COVID impact is still there. Afghanistan had already taken a hit, around 2% loss of its GDP the previous year. If we add them up in structured models, and we ran different models, we spoke to different development agencies, World Bank, IMF, and so on, ADB, Asian Development Bank. So the perspectives are very, very dark. In the next 12 months, we may expect between 25 to 30% of GDP gone. So remember, I had started with 8 to 11% loss, and they had recovered in the previous decades, but this is double. More than doubling the impact, the shock on the GDP. What happens on the poverty is even worse. So the poverty rate is around 55% based on the last publications and some updates from the World Bank. It may jump up to 95 to 97%. So we may expect everybody to fall below the poverty line. So these are dramatic numbers. This is not a crisis like Afghanistan faced before and can overcome by itself, if you ask me. So what is also specific to this crisis? First, we talked about the disruption, sudden stop of the aid, which is the vital financial resource for the government to provide services. Pay retirees, pay salaries, and invest in education, health, and so on and so forth. So this has stopped because of international sanctions. And then liquidity crisis came. Why? Because some foreign exchange was being pumped to the central bank regularly, and this has stopped. So this led to liquidity crisis. If people cannot get money from the ATMs, and we saw this news in the media, They cannot spend, they cannot pay their rents, they cannot buy food, and so on and so forth. Some of the civil servants were not being paid, so it adds to the difficulty that the households are facing. So some of these issues are being fixed as we move along, but there are two other issues. One of them is the sanction list, the gray list, that Afghanistan was part of it, but it was removed in 2017. If the current chaos continues, Afghanistan may go back to the sanction list and won't be able to do any official transaction internationally. So think about it, no remittances. It's also a lifeline for the households. No banking transport. So think about the producers in Afghanistan, even food producers. They need to import goods. They cannot get the foreign reserves because they cannot get official access to banks and so on. And for loans, it's even worse. So as an investor in Afghanistan, Afghan investor, let's say, you cannot get any credit from the bank to invest, to expand your business. So it will be even worse if this aspect is not carefully taken care of. There's also a debt facility. Afghanistan was accorded a delay in the payment of the services of its debt until the end of the year. This is also a hanging knife on top of the economy. If the international committees ask Afghanistan at the end of December to pay the service of its debts, first, there's not enough foreign exchange to pay back this debt, and it will be an additional burden on the economy. So that's why it's a different challenge. Already the shock was bigger, and the expected impact of the shock is at least twice of what has happened before, but there are also other challenges linked to financial sector. So what happens? Of course, as we follow from the media, the new administration is cognizant of the challenges. International community is trying to help its best. Recently, UN called for pledging, and 1.1 billion was pledged, but probably only 1/3 of it reached the country, only 300 million. So there's a big gap. What is UNDP doing? Because both Zafiris and I, we are consulting to UNDP. They are shifting the structure of their operations to make it more grassroots operations and not to get caught up on the overall big picture sanctions and political fractions and so on. I put some pictures here. So what UN and affiliated institutions are doing, they are doing vaccinations. So on the right-hand side, you see in Kandahar province, polio vaccine, probably administered by UNICEF and WHO. And on the left-hand side, food distribution. So for the moment, the only aid reaching Afghanistan is about humanitarian aid, food and medicine. But as you see in the title, it's an urgent humanitarian relief that is needed to prevent a catastrophe. Thank you so much, and over to you, Paolo.
Well, thank you, Sebnem. You certainly set the stage for this conversation on Afghanistan, and it's a dire picture. Again, I mean, I can't stress more than you have how unusually bad all this is. A country that was already doing poorly, on a good day, and heavily dependent on foreign aid for everything, for its operational budget, for everything, and for importing. You explained that very well. I don't have anything to add to this. And that lifeline has been chopped off, gone completely. And so poor people are now literally destitute. So God help them, seriously. And again, I appreciate the humanitarian efforts of your agency and other donors, but that's humanitarian aid. That means prevent people from starvation. It's not going to, build factories or improve agricultural productivity or trading missions or welcoming investors in the country to look for great, opportunities. That's a dream. That's not going to happen. So that leads us to you, Zafiris. Given all this, what's your prediction or your assessment of what's going on already right now on the ground, and what may happen? As Sebnem described for us, winter is coming, it's getting cold, things are going to get worse before they get better? And are we going to have a refugee exodus? And if so, what does that mean? Floor is yours. We need your, we don't hear you. Sorry.
Of course you don't hear me, I was muted.
Thank you.
This was the
Thank you,
instruction from the moderator. Keep the phone off while you listen to others. Thank you very much, Paolo, and the university and the GPI for the invitation. And of course, Sebnem for providing such a clear picture of the situation. And also setting the bar so high. She finished within 10 minutes as it was supposed. I hope I can match that. I will start saying, expanding on what Sebnem said and what to expect in the near future. And I'll put the whole situation of refugees in context because the question is, what are we going to do with that? And I will summarize. I mean, Sebnem was kind of nice to say she doesn't want to provide a dramatic picture. I will describe it in less dramatic way. We are heading for a perfect storm. It's a political, it is an economic, it is a humanitarian, and all this will lead to a huge refugee crisis. It is political because of two things. First, that the government has not been recognized by anybody, even by the kind of new allies such as China, Iran, Pakistan. Although they were before, they were not involved much in Afghanistan. And second, we don't really know what the government is doing. If we follow the announcements they have made of general amnesty, for example, of respect for minorities and religious or ethnic, with respect to rights of women and children, the announcements were very good. But in practice, none of them has been followed. And it's not that they have been followed, they are followed in different ways. Pakistan is tribal and different provinces and tribes do different things. For example, of the 36 provinces, 3 allow female aid workers to operate. The others either do not or require that the female worker should have her husband with her, which assumes that the husband is not working. There is a contradiction there. So we're dealing with a political situation that we cannot handle other than wait and see before we normalize the relationship with the government, therefore with the country. So we don't have a normalized relationship with the country. The economics were very well explained by Sebnem, where we stand today, and they are going to become even worse. The country is facing, on top of the economic and political crisis, a national drought that was declared in the summer, or that may be the biggest in the history of the country. And there was one World Bank publication saying that Haiti and Afghanistan are the worst hit countries from environmental disasters in the world. So we have this political chaos, we have this environmental and the drought coming on board, which will affect the economy. What do we expect of that? A humanitarian crisis. There are projections that not 1/3 of the population, which is now will suffer from food insecurity, but 23 million. This more than 50% of the population. I saw a statistic by a UN agency that 1 million children may die from starvation. And in the last 2 months, in addition to the drop in GDP by 20–30%, as the World Bank, ADB, UNDP say, wages have fallen by 10%, unemployment can double to 30%, and food prices have gone up by 20–30%. So it is a full crisis that started from the political kind of fluidity, plus the economic effects caused by the sudden stop of aid and the freezing of official Afghan assets of the central bank abroad. So we're heading for a perfect storm. Now, with respect to refugees, how can we see this thing? I mean, the starting point cannot be other than where the international community agrees, which is the 1951 Convention for Refugees, which is a marvel of humanity. It was done in 1951 in the middle of the Cold War. And it says effectively, in plain words, if somebody knocks at the door and asks for help as a refugee, you don't close the door, you don't beat them, and you don't turn them back. You let them in, you provide food, you provide accommodation, you provide protection, you provide deployment even, and then you assess the situation, and then you determine. What we see today defies the convention 100%. It is a total turnaround of what we said and did then. Now, we may think why it was so generous in 1951, and perhaps we all know that at the time it was the Cold War. So effectively, it applied to Europe for refugees who are running away from communist countries. And of course, the convention was spearheaded by the Americans and the Europeans. So it was this kind of country. I mean, the developing countries had not much interest then, and the issue of refugee was not that much there. Or even if it were in Pakistan and India after the separation, nobody was paying much attention, which is not very nice to say. So the idea was then, I mean, let's bring them in and show how good democracy is versus communism. Now we have backtracked. Where do we stand? Now, when somebody comes, we ask for proof of identification. In many countries, developing countries in Afghanistan, this does not exist. And in many places, the identification has been lost or it was never issued, number one. Second, we ask for visas, for passport. I mean, this is a pie in the sky. Then we ask for visas, assuming there are embassies in that country, and they can pay for it. Now, if you take the cost of a passport and a visa, even if they have it, in a country which is $500 per capita per year, $500 per capita per year, they live on $1.50 per day. So if I run away with my wife and 2-3 children, in American terms, means I have to pay $60,000 in a country that has no savings, and 80–90% can be under the poverty line. They cannot even afford food. So we ask for these things, while these things are not realistically to be asked. These people are not going to have them. Truth amidst some of them, the refugees, can be others who run for whatever reason, but for the bulk, the vast majority, these things are not attainable. Second, we are asking for proof of persecution. I don't know of any policeman, prisoner, prison officer, or torturer who issues a certificate so he can emigrate, right? You run away, you run for your life, as they say. So the conditions we have put are impossible to solve. And in fact, as I hinted at the beginning, because of the economic crisis, we are not facing an exodus of political refugees. We will have an exodus of economic refugees, something like you have in the border between the US and Mexico. So let me conclude here, but before I do so, and coming from Greece, let me give you an example. 2015 was the previous wave of refugees. 1 million came to Europe, most of them via Turkey to Greece. When the first boat arrived at the islands in Greece, the people went out and offered them blankets, food. They took them home. And in fact, I mean, the islanders were proposed to get a Nobel for peace. Of course, I mean, from a humanitarian perspective, I mean, we're all humans, you do it. But then another wave came, and another wave came. 1 million within a short period of a few weeks, effectively, and there were no camps. There was no provision for food. Where would they sleep? There was no accommodation. So at the end, the islanders turn against them. So we have a real problem when we do policy. Yes, we have the principles, how prepared we are to accommodate, I mean, our principles, and what does, in democracy, the popular vote or the popular opinion goes in. So these are real problems to solve. I don't have a silver bullet. the only thing I can say is that we should ensure that the humanitarian perspective is kept along with the political kind of accommodation of refugees. But we have to think more, not only how these people come in the back of the truck and they die from asphyxiation or are beaten up in Belarus. We have to provide humanitarian corridors. We should find a way that these people can leave their countries. Let me stop here. And again, many thanks for the invitation.
Well, actually, we do have one of our students whom I know quite well because he's from Afghanistan, and he was lucky enough to get out of the country, having worked with the American armed forces. Aga Mirza, I don't know how to, yes, can you please chime in?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello,
Make it brief,
everyone.
but please talk. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Aga Mirza Fazel. Thank you for having me here. I'm a student at the BAU. Again, I was just been in the start of this webinar, so I think very good discussions and a lot of point out from the professors. Thanks so much. I got some questions. I don't know who to refer to, but please feel free, any panelist who wants to just go and take it. I would like to bring it up to you guys. The first question would be, what will happen for the Afghans who work for the U.S. Military or any other U.S. organization in Afghanistan? I know the evacuation got ended in August, but there is some, covert operations happening, but it's not like really, it's not been very like effective. The second question would be like, what this, like, will the U.S. recognize the Taliban government in the near future? And also, what does this mean for the U.S. national security? And is this a U.S. intelligence failing? This is what I questions from you guys. Please feel free, whoever wanted to take it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aga Mirza. Thank you for being here. And I leave it to our experts to respond. So basically, what are we going to do about all those that we know, thousands who worked for American forces or other allied forces under the NATO command. And we know some have been taken out, many others have not. Are we going to recognize? That's a very good question. At some point, the Taliban government, at least maybe you can address those two. Anybody, Sebnem or Zafiris, whoever wants to go first. Please, Sebnem, you start if you want.
Sorry, I don't have any expertise. Maybe you should take it, Paolo, and Zafiris can also chip
Okay, Zafiris, you have any thoughts on this?
Well, this is kind of slippery road for somebody to say publicly, or take a position if he comes from a technocratic background. But let me go by the newspapers reports. What is going to happen to the former soldiers or Afghan soldiers or those who work in the US or allied forces or were associated with the previous government? As I said, the Taliban have declared a general amnesty. Now, reports say there are house-to-house searches and there are cases of persecution. So nobody knows what is happening on the ground and what will happen in a little while from here. Now, again, I'll say a report which is there, so I don't take a position on that. There was a question why ISIS and Daesh have been resurrected so strongly now, as it appears. And they are creating a lot of havoc in the country with random bombings and killings. And somebody said that because there is no general amnesty, and these people are at risk of being persecuted by the Taliban, and they're soldiers and they know how to kill, if you want, that's what it was mentioned. The ISIS and Daesh, from a few hundred people and few cells, their numbers have increased from people associated with the previous government who have joined them. Now, I don't know whether this is correct, but this is a scenario that it is likely. So we don't know how things will go in the future. And as I said, I don't know how substantiated, verified are these reports. Now, with respect to the US security, I mean, I'm the least one to talk about it. But on that one, I mean, what we know is that there was a difference between the Taliban and ISIS. ISIS had a global jihadist agenda. To the extent that they are marginalized or eliminated in Afghanistan, I don't think they have many other places to go. Okay, while the Taliban are interested in imposing their own version of the Sharia in Afghanistan. So it is possible that it will be a situation of live and let die, like kind of North Korea, a regime we don't like, a regime that does a lot of things that contravene international conventions, but at the same time is benign, it is out of picture. So these are kind of loud thinking, if you want, without being a political scientist.
Well, thank you for that. And again, obviously, this is a very, needless to say, honestly, my honest answer to that would be, who knows? Because it's, which is not very helpful. I understand that. You know, it's not very illuminating, but I think it is so complicated and unprecedented. Of course, as we know politically, not to focus too much on the United States, but as we know, the United States had a pretty significant role in the country. The whole modality of American withdrawal has been not exactly a success. Okay, let's be polite here. And so the government here in Washington is very, very, how can I say, hesitant about doing anything that looks like another mistake, you know, whatever that may be. And so they're practically doing nothing. Maybe it's the policy right now. And I don't know, and I think I feel for the people who like Aga Mirza's friends and colleagues and maybe family members, I don't know, who are stuck there, left behind, even though just like him, they had the the meritorious service of supporting the ISAF forces and other Western NATO-led or international efforts or what have you. And so this is pretty bad. And I don't know how this can be made better. Of course, the United States, maybe subterraneously, has leverage. All this money of the central bank has been indicated before, the billions of dollars that are here in Washington, it could be dangled as say, hey, if you do this for us, we can do something for you because we got your money here. So I have no idea. This is speculation. But back to you, Sebnem, I just wanted to ask you if you see, again, anything at all that can be, can give hope. In other words, you portrayed the picture. You said how things are, and things are going to get worse. The financial situation, the fiscal situation, the AIDS situation, the drought, public health. Can we see anything perhaps more substantial coming from the international community via UN agency or other vehicles to stabilize the humanitarian situation beyond the efforts underway right now that you aptly described? In other words, is there something that can be done short of legitimizing the Taliban regime that, however, prevents mass starvation? Do you have any signs based on what your understanding of what's going on that some efforts are underway to prevent a calamity in terms of millions of people dying literally of hunger? Do you see that or not?
Okay, these are signs, and this is what I heard in meetings. These are not really set in stone or decisions, official decisions of the institutions. What I see, there is a genuine desire, maybe not from the US, as you described, for different reasons, but the rest of the developed countries and neighboring countries to help Afghanistan. I think people are aware of the situation, and with 100% of poverty, things can explode, right? So what is happening? One, UNDP stayed and UN agencies on the overall stayed in the country, while World Bank and others, they left the country. So they are staying like the executing arm of international community. This is a positive sign. And they are ready to take over the projects, big projects that were held in Afghanistan, like agriculture and transformation infrastructure projects. They are ready to take over implementation of these projects, but they cannot take it over 100%. If the project was 500 million, maybe they can implement in 1 year 50 million of it, but it's still a positive sign. This is still a help. So this kind of conversations are taking place between the World Bank, delegating to UNDP or other UN agencies, implementation of their projects, since the money is there and the infrastructure is there, the network of people are there to keep doing the work, to keep delivering. So this is very important. This is not easy. But it is a discussion that is taking place. The other one, you may have heard about it, that the EU wants to help neighboring countries, give them some aid to help the refugees. This is a positive sign. I don't know the amounts and I don't know the implementation of this wish, let's say, but some of it can be also used to help Afghanistan in his budget deficit. Not give salaries maybe, but probably Afghanistan, if he is able to pay the electricity bill to its neighboring countries, because if they don't pay the electricity so far, there was no complaint, but Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and other neighbors who are providing electricity can cut the electricity and think what will happen. Yeah. It will even get worse in the middle of winter. So this kind of arrangements are being discussed. In the ground, what I see and what I hear, the border provinces, for example, these are the richest ones. It's a relative richness, but they are richest because they trade with neighboring countries. If we can help these traders, we can help this local chamber of commerces, providing the money, the bank loans, so that people can keep trading and providing services and food, at least to these provinces. So far, there is no security. So if the food is coming from the border provinces, can be also linked up to central of Afghanistan and distributed to other provinces. So if we can have a lifeline also from the private sector, small enterprises and so on and so forth, with help from the agencies and with help, but every discussion starts with humanitarian first. And every supporting service, financial, banking, logistics, trade, trucks, drivers, this is where there is need for more. And this is where these agencies, NGOs can also help. This is how I see the situation.
Thank you, Sebnem. Another perhaps related question to both of you is this. And again, I'm drawing an example from another crisis that unfortunately is unfolding that both of you are familiar with because of your past professional experience. We're looking at Ethiopia right now, right? And at least the reporting that I see, and I'm sure you see the same things, is of allegations of the Ethiopian government having prevented, aid reaching the Tigray region, which is allegedly responsible for the insurrection, whatever. And so the accusations, which are pretty strong, is preventing food convoys or other aid convoys to reach the region, and that really is leading to mass starvation, or at least imperiling. They mentioned 400,000 people. I don't know the numbers, but so that's what seems to be going on. And so my question to you is, do we have any sign that the Taliban is obstructing the delivery of even basic aid, humanitarian aid that you so kindly described for us? Or are they saying, this is in our interest, we don't want our people to die, and so let UNDP or others or the World Food Program or whoever come in, the Red Cross, I have no idea who it can be, and deliver food and medicine and immunizations. What do you see? Is there any understanding of how that is going? Are they just allowing all this to go unhindered, or is there something else?
Okay, what I heard, again, because I had to follow up in different meetings and Zafiris probably couldn't attend all of them, what I see and I follow, our managers are back, for example, at least for the UNDP and the same for the other managers of the UN agencies. They started in certain provinces, implementation of the projects. The projects were ready, they took their different shape, maybe the different procurement, but the money was there and being implemented. So far, there is no such, restriction on the UN implementation, but it's not everywhere. So I don't know the details, which provinces they are more sensitive and maybe they won't let UNDP to go. So far, our managers describe it like a honeymoon. How much this honeymoon will last, we don't know. But so far, as long as the UN is there physically, and it was a requirement, that none of the agencies, none of the biggest, donors are there except for the UN forces. So this is important. The UN managers are there. They communicate somehow, and they get the green light to start implementing in that province, that province. Will it cover all provinces? I don't know, but so far the implementation is going on. Over to you, Zafiris.
Zafiris, do you have any different reading on this?
No, I mean, this is the reading, of course, having a real view what's happening on the ground is difficult. And if I can bring the point one step before, we're dealing with a situation where perhaps the first time a rebel group that was subject to sanctions took over the whole country. Usually we sanction different groups or we impose sanctions to an already existing country, like Iran, for example. Now, which way the sanctions will go now, we do not know. And this will affect the delivery, as you mentioned now. For example, I mean, we have two extremes, if I can give two examples. One is Burma, okay, which is sanctioning the government. And the other is Cuba, which is total embargo. In between, we have Venezuela. Something is allowed, but something is not allowed, okay? So we don't know how this will be approached by the international community. Now, and this, I mean, taking the point from Sebnem, who said the World Bank has left. I mean, this is the situation, for example, with the IMF. The IMF cannot give money except to the government. And unless the government is recognized internationally, the IMF cannot give money. Now, the World Bank cannot be in a country when the IMF has not given the clearance, all right, and has established financial stability, okay, given their kind of purposes. Now, coming to the specifics of the disbursement of aid and the actual implementation, let's give credit where credit is due. I mean, the UN has pledged 1.3 billion. The US already removed from the sanction list about the estimated $500 million, $500 million to be channeled as humanitarian assistance. These are announcements. How much it has flown on the ground yet, I do not know. However, I think, although it's only a month or two since the world was caught by surprise, there are many reports, and it's on the web, that the UN is very forcefully there. For example, 3 million children missed vaccination of polio for many reasons, either resistance in the rural areas by the Taliban or because of COVID. And the COVID diverted a lot of the medical expenditures from basic healthcare for emergency care and vaccinations. So the UNICEF now is starting a full vaccination program. It plans. Now, how many they have vaccinated, we do not know. We know that there has been significant amounts of food already distributed, in-kind things, blankets, for example, for the winter. The UNDP is proposing a cash for work program, and we had that before, area-based. And all these are happening somehow, or not somehow, are happening by providing direct services to the people. This is the very trick now. We cannot go through the official government, not that they don't want to achieve the same things that we want, but to channel funds if the government is not recognized is not permitted legally, if you want. So the idea now is to find a way to deliver all these things directly to the people by passing officially the government, except for the security that the government can provide.
Yeah.
So it is a very complex situation now that we are going through. And the example I gave, that aid workers are not allowed, female aid workers are not allowed to provide their services at all, or they have to be accompanied by a male member of the family. I mean, that even the Taliban do not know how to handle it, because it's a contradiction. For example, they said teachers can go back to schools, but girls cannot go back to schools. I mean, there are always contradictions and messages that come out that somehow do not come together.
Yeah. So we have a question from one of our students at BAU, but I guess probably you already addressed it, because she's asking how is it possible to deliver aid without recognizing the government? And the question was addressed to you, Sebnem. I guess you already answered that, but maybe you want to elaborate further on this.
Yes,
how do we resolve this dilemma of not recognizing the government but trying to deliver aid to the people? I guess something goes to Zafiris.
Correct. Hello, Talman. This is focusing mainly on the area base, like Zafiris put it. I put it as grassroots, so working with communities, directly helping the communities. If you have seen the last slides, vaccination, it goes to the community. You just need a green light from the authority, the ministry, whoever in the province is in charge, and go to the vaccination. You deliver the food package. This is how the implementation is taking place now. One broader question is about energy bill. Electricity is imported too. We only emphasize the food, but electricity is imported from neighboring countries. They have not been paid for X months, 3 months now for this bill. And tomorrow they are able to cut the electricity. So this is a hanging question. If the aid money, the pledged amounts, can be directed to pay this electricity bill, which is also vital for people and the economy. This is a different implementation, but it has not taken place yet. Okay. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Again, I tell my students, some of them I hope are here today, we were just talking about energy issues yesterday, as a matter of fact, in class. And I said, and I repeat, talking about emerging countries, if you don't have energy, you don't have anything. Okay, let's be clear. That's the foundation for everything else. No services, no buildings, no hospitals, no nothing. And so in a situation as dramatic as Afghanistan, you add to that cutting electricity, well, then you're back in the Stone Age, essentially, pretty much. And as Afghanistan does not produce enough, it produces some, but not enough of its own electricity, and it has imported via international transmission lines from neighboring countries, they don't have any cash. They can't pay. And at some point, the countries may say, hey, you don't pay, as Sebnem pointed out, we cut. And then what? Well, then it's a disaster becomes a catastrophe. I don't know if there are any words to describe what that would mean. So let's see if aid money, as you say, perhaps could be used to pay those utility bills, if we can be so prosaic. But let me ask a different question now, as we are kind of coming towards the end of the time allocated to us. Back to you, Zafiris, and the refugees. You pointed out of previous crises, and we remember Germany, for instance, right? When Chancellor Merkel, I think it was 2015, and this was about Syrians mostly. But I mean, it was a little bit of everything, but mostly it was Syrian refugees, unfortunately, again, on account of the civil war there. And she said, oh, welcome, everybody, we're a generous country. And if memory serves me right, please correct me if I'm wrong with the numbers, it was about 1 million people, that converged or went through various avenues, and many of them at least converged into Germany. And at the beginning, it seemed like, oh yes, so it's a big country. Of course, Germany is a rich country, the biggest economy in Europe, member of the G7, blah, blah, blah. We can accommodate. Well, it didn't come out so well politically, because there were a lot of backlash, not everywhere, but localized, sense of who are these people? They're Muslim, whatever that is. And so politically speaking, it didn't go so well. And and now we are waiting for the next wave, keeping in mind, and again for context, that Europe, in particular Southern Europe, has been the target of an endless stream of other refugees who come to Europe for completely different reasons from Africa, right? From North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. They go on these little boats, and some of which unfortunately sink in the Mediterranean, and many of them managed to get to Italy or to Spain or whatever. And this has been going on for years. And there is and this has created or at least has triggered the blossoming of political forces which are clearly nationalistic, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, anti-everything. And now we're telling the same Europeans, gear up, because more coming. And do you see, Zafiris, or you, Sebnem, anything going on right now that people say, yes, given this dire scenario in Afghanistan, we can reasonably expect another wave of refugees? Is there a plan? Do we have some kind of a division of labor in terms of how many, where are the accommodation centers? How do we process all these people? Do you see anything in the works, or is it going to be catch as catch can, people streaming in and again, I'm extrapolating from other news. We see what's happening, and now it's a completely different situation at the Poland-Belarus border, right? In which refugees are used as, weapons of political attack, so to speak. Are we going to have these kinds of things, or Hungary with the wall? I mean, whatever that is, or is there going to be an effort to say this is happening, and this is going to be the reasonably organized response of the international community, Europe, the United States, whoever else? Do you see any of that afoot? Because this crisis is brewing right now. Zafiris.
Yeah, I had an old professor who used to say, a good question is the one that I can answer. And so I can provide an answer, but it will not be a good answer in the sense to the point that you're asking. Yeah, it is true that in Europe, we have a lot of economic refugees, mainly, from Libya and Algeria, and a lot of them come with others from Africa. And these are economic refugees. And so for them, what is the best solution? I think Macron at some point put it on the table, is let's increase foreign aid to increase employment and growth opportunities in their countries, so they will be able to live there. They don't become economic refugees anymore. So this is, I think, the root of the problem, to bring the periphery, as they say in development economics, to bring the periphery, to converge the periphery with the center. So all wealth is not concentrated in the United States or Canada or Europe, but it is going also to some of these filters down to the countries that are sending the economic refugees. The problem with this one is, of course, this is a long-term strategy. So in the meantime, I would say what we have to do is, if for some reason, one or another, they come, we have to treat it humanely. That's what it is. What we see in Belarus. I mean, imagine being there. And if you are an 18-year-old man, okay, I mean, I've been in the army. I mean, you can take a lot, let's put it this way. But assume you are a mother with a child in the cold, in the night, you will freeze to death. You don't have anywhere to eat or to do any kind of physical activity. I mean, it is a dramatic situation. So at that point, I think values come above politics. Of course, Merkel paid the price for welcoming all these refugees. And I remember the case of one guy in Germany who was granted asylum legally, and then he committed a murder. This was first page. And you need one case like that to change the public opinion from one day to another. So these are problems, as Gutierrez, the Secretary General of the UN, said. We should not expect that problems that we did not solve in decades, we can solve them in a short time. In the meantime, we should go full steam with humanitarian assistance. And that's something that we have to do. And in fact, I mean, I read that the Chinese and the Iranians and the Pakistanis already provide humanitarian assistance. So Afghanistan now can benefit from them. Which stance to take? I mean, there are, as usual, the two stands, which is you engage, you give them and you engage, or you beat them with a stick on the head. So do you take the carrot or the stick approach? So at this point, I think the official line of the UN, I cannot speak for them, but the way I read it is engage, provide humanitarian assistance, and keep the dialogue going. And this is what Guterres also said. Mm-hmm. I didn't answer your question.
Oh, no, look, we are all trying to, figure things out. It's a moving target, and unfortunately, it's not a happy, not needless to repeat here that it is a really dire situation, and it is so unfortunate that is hitting a country that has been hit so hard for different reasons for a couple of generations. And again, some of the reasons are really not within the country. Never mind, we're not going to try to make the whole history of Afghanistan a little complicated. But for you, Sebnem, I think our good friend Telman was asking again, I suppose you addressed it before, but can you add anything to the fact that, under the circumstances, normal delivery of aid is really, really difficult. You said we're trying to stay there, get the green light, operate in the district where the government allows us in. We try to maybe reorganize our units to focus and concentrate on humanitarian aid. And if there are other ongoing projects which are beyond humanitarian, we try to continue to some extent, maybe scale down, etc. The question, I guess, is, does that work? Does that give any hope of a future economic development for people who are under the yoke of this government that is, certainly not elected and certainly not recognized by anybody? Mm-hmm. All that notwithstanding, is there some leeway? I guess that's the question. Mm-hmm. To improve the lot, and I would say in a positive, dreamy scenario, reduce the urgency to become a refugee, to the extent that the situation on the ground is at the very least livable. Well, people are not desperate, or at least fewer of them will be desperate. Do you have anything to add to what you already said?
Yeah, of course, the current situation of delivery is piecemeal, so it is not helping, majority of the people. It is a positive sign, that's it. But I'm not an expert in sanctions. You know more about Palestine and so on and so forth. I know your teaching activities as well. So there are ways to get around these sanctions. So to go different procurement rules and different modalities and so on. So there may be a way to channel more international aid, which is also parked there somewhere, because the aid was committed, right, every year, to get it to the right hands. This is the problem. And keep the Afghans as much as possible in Afghanistan or in the region. Because remember, Afghans, they move. They are used to go migrate to Iran and come back 3 years later, or Pakistan and come back. COVID was a big showcase for this. Most of them were asked to leave Iran or Pakistan because they were taught to bring the virus to these countries, which is probably wrong. But so they are used to migrate in the region. When they reach Europe, I think it will be really, really difficult to address the issue. That's why, solving the financial bottleneck is very important, and continuing somehow with different modalities. International aid is very different, but it is possible. It's based on experience. So it doesn't become a catastrophe, but like Zafiris said the other day, a contained crisis. Contained humanitarian crisis is better than catastrophes. So in the short term, this is my thinking.
Thank you for that. One last thing, and again, not to paint a dark picture even darker. We know, I think, from experience of other situations, but also from Afghanistan, that certainly being a refugee is not like, oh, you go to the airport, get your ticket and board a plane and land in Frankfurt or London. It's not that, right? And we know, even if we look at the situation here in the United States with the southern border, there are horrible stories of people being exploited, trafficked, women being taken away, going to prostitution. I mean, horrible stories of exploitation and really cruelty inflicted on these poor souls. And I imagine that these poor souls in Afghanistan who have to leave the country with not a penny, practically, maybe a bag of clothes if they're lucky, they will encounter, I would think, similar hardships in terms of networks of gangs, of exploiters and what have you, who would prey on them, right? I mean, that's a probable, so this become casualties on the way out, trying to get a better life, and then fall prey of gangs, of international criminal organizations and girls taken into prostitution, or what, can you shed some light into that? And again, is there anything, Zafiris, that can be done to, I wouldn't say to stop, but at least to mitigate any of this? Or is this just the way it is?
Yeah, it can be done. It will depend on the services that we can provide to alleviate the deterioration of conditions, to reduce the levels of needs, and provide a stable framework. Let me give you an example from the experience of Greece. A lot of fights were happening within the camps. So you had the refugees there, all of them facing the same fate, and there were a massive kind of conflict within them. Sometimes it was the Afghans fighting the Algerians, the Libyans, the Africans, whatever it is. But when, I mean, people are desperate, anything can spark an explosion. But if you have good services, good accommodation, and good management, you have interpreters, and you give them support, I mean, you minimize this kind of risks. Whether there will be trafficking and prostitution, again, it is on the services that we have on policing and providing services and curbing practices that we do not want to happen. So again, I'm going back that we will not solve problems that have not been solved for decades. The 3.5 whatever million Afghans, I think I read Afghans, I read that they may go very quickly to 5 billion in terms of refugees. And we will not avoid this, but it's better to prepare for it and be as generous and principled and true to our conventions and international rights and announcements as we can be.
Well, on that note, I think we've run out of our allocated time, and I want to thank you profusely, Sebnem and Zafiris, for giving us at least an honest picture. I know it's not inspiring. I don't know what to say. This is what's going on, and I think that that's what we as students and for our students at the university and others who participated, it's enlightening to understand what's actually happening without trying to sweeten all this and make it look what it isn't. We really hope, I think echoing what you just said, Zafiris, that the international community will rise to the occasion and do what is necessary from a humanitarian standpoint. These are fellow human beings suffering, most of them due to no fault of their own, and just allowing this catastrophe to unfold and just watch it, or maybe look the other way, pretend that it's not happening. It's not to the standards of what we would like to think we are as international community. So on that note of hope, I would like to thank you, Sebnem, thank you, Zafiris, and thank to my good friend and colleague, Denise, who has been laboring to organize, produce, direct, coordinate this event as always, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.